good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
You're obsessed with her, and you're obsessed with her daughter!
All right, easy, Geraldo.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking Billy the Puppet. We're talking Lee Winnell fishing in a toilet full of poop. And we're talking the briefest glimpse of Dina Meyer. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking My Family Needs Me.
Oh my god, no.
It almost would have been better if he just delivered it like that, right? Like, my family needs me, Adam, I gotta go, bye.
Yeah, like, peace out, girl. I'll see you on the other side of this dingy, dirty bathroom.
Everyone, we are talking James Wan Saw. And, oh my, we're a little late to the party, because this is coming out a couple days after Spiral hits theaters, so we hope everyone, that was able to go see it, enjoyed it, but, Joe is not one of those people.
No, it's true. But you know what? I'm happy for everyone who has been able to go, and I hope that it's great. We are obviously recording this in advance of that release date, so we're going to try not to speculate because we have no fucking idea.
Not at all. So yeah, none of us, no one on this episode has seen Spiral, and that is a perfect segue into our two very special guests for this episode, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone. So we have two former guests on the podcast today, the first of whom is the program's director for the Austin Asian American Film Festival and a film critic for the Austin Chronicle. You'll recognize her voice from our episodes on Fatal Frame and The Handmaiden. Our second guest is a writer for such outlets as Comics and Gaming Magazine, Grimm Magazine, Bloody Disgusting, and Pajiba, and you'll recognize her voice from our episode on Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Please welcome, respectively, Jenny Nulf and Lindsay Traves.
Yay!
Woo!
Woo!
It was so hard to stay quiet during you making that really hilarious Dr. Gordon joke and then immediately saying, we will not be speculating about Spiral. Because those are two things that, summon me to talk.
Lindsay's like, I feel personally attacked right now.
Yeah. I was like, nope, this is fine. You can survive. But if you had, one more, I would have shown up like Beetlejuice. If there was a third thing, I would have talked.
So, listeners, if you listened to our minisode last week with one Greg Mucci, former guest from our Friday the 13th Part 7 episode, you will know that we have a little gaggle of friends in this group that we have dubbed ourselves the Sawvivors because we all randomly decided to marathon the Saw franchise in October last year. So, that's why we have everyone coming on to talk about this movie.
Yeah, it's a shame that we couldn't have everybody on one, but the recording software just doesn't allow it. So that's why Greg got the special edition, and then we brought the girls on for the main event.
Woo! Yeah.
I'm actually surprised it's taken us 2.5 years to get to Saw. I'm not going to lie.
Is it an obvious pick for us?
I think it is. This is one of our favorite franchises.
No, I know, but I feel like it's not something that I don't know, the people are clamoring for. Although maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure the listeners are going to be like, hello.
I'm clamoring for
it.
Jinx.
And that's really all that matters.
Yeah.
Totally fine. Well, okay. So, obviously we asked y'all onto this episode, why do you love Saw so much? Be it this film in particular or the franchise as a whole.
I love the Saw franchise. There are so many reasons to love it. I think what's really special about it is it's a modern slasher franchise. We tend to really, there are so many great franchises obviously, but we tend to hold all of these 80s ones in such high regard. And I feel like Saw is one that we got to, at least my age group and our age group got to experience in real time. We got to see each one as it came out in theaters, which is so cool. And it's a long running franchise. It's done a lot of the things that other 80s slashers franchise have done, although this isn't necessarily a slasher, but by going off the rails and retconning and messing with things. So I think it's just really exciting that we got to experience that and do that. And that's just the really simple answer as to why I love it so much.
All right, it's my turn to wax poetic, so get ready for an emotional,
Yes.
nostalgia-filled
Yes.
story about why I love Saw. Okay, guys. So it all started when I was a teen. I had a group of friends in high school where we all watched horror movies, and one friend in particular, her name is Christina. We would babysit, like we would co-babysit and watch like scary movies together. Or like on a Friday or Thursday night, I'd go over to her house because her house was closer to the high school that I lived in. I did not live in my high school that I went to. Oh my God, terrifying. And we would just like watch these movies. And I remember Saw was one of the ones that we picked out for babysitting this like infant that we got paid way too much to babysit because basically it slept the entire time and we just watched and snacked on things. Anyway, I think the first Saw movie I actually saw in theaters was Saw 5 because I could finally drive to go see one because my parents wouldn't really take us, and also the R rating. I didn't sneak into movies as often as other people did. I was a goody two-shoes, but fun fact, I did sneak into a James Wan R-rated movie the day before I turned 17.
Was it Dead Silence?
Dead Silence. It was Dead Silence.
Trying to do quick math. I was like, what? How old is she? Okay.
I was like, I'm not waiting. One day. Anyway, the Saw movies mean a lot to me. I love James Wan with like a passion. This franchise started it all. I really was into torture porn, which got me into French Extremity. So Saw is also kind of like,
Oh, it's your gateway.
oh my God, it kind of was my gateway into horror. Like the Saw movies, like I just like love them. And as my professor, who I love to like talk about all the time, my horror like queer professor, Harry Benshoff, used to say, is the Saw franchise is the most interesting franchise that we have because it actually tries to have like a plot line going throughout, and it doesn't ever try to reboot or restart within the 7 films that it. He said this when Saw 3D was coming out. So
Yeah, well, I mean, no,
Yes.
I want to piggyback, no, because I think both of y'all are absolutely right. You know, like these, and we touched on this with our minisode with Greg, but like these were event films, right? Like the tagline for all of these movies were, "If it's Halloween, it must be Saw," because we got one of these every year. And we'll of course talk about kind of torture porn in general because this one really is the least torture porny out of all of them in this franchise. But I do feel like a lot of, you know, quote unquote real horror fans, like they grew up with Friday the 13th in the 80s, like a lot of them look down on this because they were just like, this isn't real horror, this is just gross shit. And I beg to differ.
This isn't your mother's torture porn. It's not your mother's 80s horror franchise.
I mean, you know, I think that maybe it's a little overproduced for a lot of people because they like that like low budget. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm saying low budget charm of Friday the 13th, but it's like these are also low budget. They just have a look, they have an aesthetic that Friday the 13th does not.
Well, it's heavily stylized, right? We did talk about this a little bit with Greg, but this feels like it's drawing directly from the 90s boom of horror directors being cherry-picked from music video directors, and I feel like you can really see this. And I know we're going to talk about the production in terms of why it is shot and why it looks this way, but for me, that stylistic approach mixed with the graphic violence or the perceived graphic violence felt fresh and new. Like there was a grimy realness to this, but it also felt like, oh my God, I'm living in that Bush music video for 3D Fly.
Is Bush a band?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Trace, I forgot who I'm talking to.
I thought you were referencing like George Bush, like the Bush era, and I was like, what are you talking about?
I mean, I'm pretty sure we could draw some connections between George W. Bush and these films.
This movie comes out 3 years after 9/11.
Yeah. This is legitimately a Bush era film.
I mean, it's totally a response to the 9/11. Like, torture porn is essentially a response to 9/11 and what happened after.
With oh my God, I don't know the name
Waterboarding and like the torture going on within the military.
The decapitation video that got leaked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Spicy episode.
Well, that's the thing, right? People just want to shit on this franchise because they think it's cheap and it's, you know, like, it's not their franchise. But I think what they're overlooking is that there's actually a lot of political statements being made around the creation of it. Like, you can maybe look at the film and say, it's just, you know, a guy playing death games with a bunch of quote-unquote innocent people. But I think to do that belittles cultural studies in general and makes it seem like, oh, there's no value in this film except for the torture porn. And the reality is these films are a reflection of what was happening in the US in the early aughts. Like, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what all of y'all have said though, like the continuity, the story, like people are like, people who haven't seen Saw, they're like, oh, it's just that torture porn shit. But it's like, yeah, but there's a story. Like, these movies, for the most part, maintain a very, very good continuity from film to film that doesn't, like, if you do, like, look into it too hard, and maybe I'll disagree, but, like, I actually think that a lot of it makes sense for the most part, up until maybe the 7th film.
I like, well, you know, an early plug. I'm currently working on a comprehensive timeline of the Saw franchise.
Oh, wow.
And, like, yeah, it makes total sense. It retcons a lot to the point where, like, when you watch Saw, like, the first movie, you're like, oh, by this point, he already has, like, 6 disciples. Which kind of doesn't really feel right when you just watch the first one. But, like, yeah, I think that's what's so special about it. Like, I love that Jenny said that when talking about what she loves about it, because that's really what's so fun. Like, that first time through the franchise when you see what was happening at the same time and where you are in continuity. Like, it's exciting every time. But yeah.
Yeah, I won't lie. I thought we might get out of this episode without having to touch on Hoffman. And then I realized midway through the film, I was like, fuck, there's Hoffman, quote unquote, as we'll learn in like 5 movies.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yes.
You know, it's upsetting that you don't want to talk about my best boys, Hoffman and Strong.
Oh my God.
But
Lindsay, leave the podcast right now.
Anyway, thanks so much for having me. I had a really great time. And follow me on Twitter.
We will never be covering Saw 5. Maybe one day we'll cover Saw 2 and Saw 6. But I don't know.
Oh, God. Okay. Let's not get too insider baseball. Okay. So we talked about how this film, it's a reaction to, 9/11, Guantanamo Bay, all of the things that are happening in Iraq. But Trace, what is the actual formal production history?
Oh, okay. I was like, where are you going with this?
Trying to keep us on track.
It's fine. Okay, well, yeah. So, I mean, what I find so fascinating about this film, I mean, because the franchise itself is kind of its own beast, but this film at the time, like, the way it got made, how this got made, I just find so fascinating, because it does kind of define, like, this style of low-budget horror that would start to get ushered in at the time. So, basically, let's go back all the way to the beginning. After finishing film school, Australian director James Wan and Australian writer Leigh Whannell wanted to write and fund a film. They were influenced by low-budget independent films like The Blair Witch Project and Darren Aronofsky's Pi. The two thought the cheapest script to shoot would involve 2 actors in one room. So that is literally the genesis of how this film came to be.
Saw 0.5, right?
Yes, and so the lack of a budget did force them to come up with creative ways to shoot the film. So Wan pitched to Whannell the idea of 2 men chained to opposite sides of a bathroom with a dead body in the middle of the floor. And they're trying to figure out why and how they're there. And at the end of the film, they had the twist from the get-go. They were like, and the end of the film is going to be that the person lying on the floor is not dead, and he's actually the reason they're locked in the room. Spoilers if you have not seen Saw.
Okay.
They didn't They didn't come up with the character of Jigsaw until months later. Whannell was working at a job he was unhappy with and was having really bad migraines. Convinced it was a brain tumor, he went to a neurologist to have an MRI, and while sitting in the waiting room, he thought, what if you were diagnosed with a brain tumor and thought you were going to die soon? How would you react to that? And he incorporated that into his plot of Saw.
For a moment, I thought we were going to go on a Final Destination twist, and it's like he's sitting in the doctor's office, and then he sees something drop, and then it turns into something else, and then it activates this. But no. Okay, just a brain tumor. Got it.
And so, much to everyone's disbelief, Wan did not intend to make a quote-unquote torture porn film, as the film only had one short segment of torture. And I think maybe this is referring to Shawnee Smith pulling the guts out.
I often feel like people think about the actual sawing that occurs at the end of the film.
That makes sense.
We don't actually see almost any of the violence in this movie.
Mm-mm. So he did say the film would play out like a mystery thriller, and it wasn't until the sequels that the plot focused more on torture scenes. And I would argue, so listeners, if you are new to this franchise, or if you've only seen the first one, I would argue the second one also isn't that violent, comparatively speaking to the rest of them. Everyone talks about the needle scene, which is upsetting, but it's not gory. I would think that the third film is when it really starts bringing in the buckets of blood.
I agree.
So, to get this film funded, Winnell and Wan basically had $30,000 to spend on the film, but as the script developed, it was clear that more funds would be needed. There were multiple failed attempts to get the script produced in Australia in the years 2001 to 2002. So that, again, our 9/11 tracking kind of makes sense there. Literary agent Ken Greenblatt read the script and suggested that they travel to LA, where their chances of finding an interested studio were greater. They initially refused due to the lack of traveling funds, which, again, I'm just like, oh my god, like this juggernaut of a film.
Yeah, they had no money. $0 went into this movie.
And plane tickets. Like, they had to take the cost of plane tickets into account. So their agent, Stacey Testro, convinced them to go. She was like, what, fuck it, like, just go. In order to help studios take interest in the script, Winnell did provide $5,000 to make a 7-minute short film based on the script's jaw trap scene, the reverse bear trap scene, which they thought would prove most effective. And they had Winnell play David, the man in the reverse bear trap. So they did that, and Wan shot the short with a 16mm camera over 2 days, transferred the footage to DVDs to ship along with the script. The one caveat that they gave with this is that Wan had to direct it, and Winnell had to act in it. They were, like, steadfast in that.
Is that, like, something anyone has seen? Is that, like, readily available on YouTube, or is that some, like, lost...
Yes, actually, so everyone, if you go to YouTube, it's like a 12-minute film, short film. You can find it there, but it does have Winnell playing the, Amanda role, but his name is David, I think, in the movie.
You do what you have to do.
I know. I'm like, I need 12 minutes. I'll BRB, but
You've never seen it?
I don't know why I've never thought to watch it. Like,
so shocked.
I know. I don't know why I never watched it. Like, as immediately as you were saying it, I was like, the only reason why I haven't watched this must be because it's not accessible, but that's not what it is at all. I just never did.
I don't know how it's going to fit into your timeline.
Yeah. I know. Now I have to change everything to throw it out. All that work for nothing.
No, the twist is going to be that one day they're going to, like, incorporate the short film into the actual, like, series chronology, and it's going to be part of the continuity. Yeah,
that's going to be...
That's Spiral!
That'll be... That's fine. I know we said we wouldn't speculate that is what Spiral's going to be.
Oh my god. So... Anyway, in early 2003, while in Los Angeles, and before they met with producer Greg Hoffman, which I do wonder if that's where...
100%. Yes, no. I know that.
That's where your boyfriend's from?
Yeah, my BF Hoffman.
Oh, God. Hoffman is the worst. Whatever.
The character, the real guy, I want to say passed away.
Wait, the
actor or the
manager?
The producer.
The producer, and I think it was like a tribute to him.
He died in 2005, so that would track.
Oh yeah, because that would have been around the time Saw 2 came out, and so because they bring Hoffman in the fourth one.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. Oh, that's really interesting, Lindsay.
Full up with Saw facts.
Well, so Hoffman's friend pulled him into his office and showed him the short. He quickly showed the short and script to his partners Mark Burke and Orrin Cools of Evolution Entertainment, and together they formed Twisted Pictures as a horror genre production label. Okay, so I know that Twisted, I know I can Google this. We all associate Twisted Pictures with Saw, right?
Oh,
yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Totally.
The second we get that little spike come down with the barbed wire, I'm like, ooh, we all have our own thoughts about Jigsaw, but I remember after the 7 or 8 year gap between films, sitting in the theater, having that Twisted Pictures logo appear on a movie theater screen, I was just like, oh, I'm in high school again.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they really haven't done anything else outside, like, Dead Silence, and then also they did Repo, the genetic opera.
Yes. Future episodes, stay tuned.
100%.
Yeah, the Twisted Pictures logo, like, I definitely only associate it with Saw, but, I know we all love that spinning chair logo intro.
With Blumhouse, yeah.
Yeah, which, you see that and you're jacked, you're ready to rock, but the Twisted Pictures, ooh, that one gets me ready.
It's a feeling that's hard to describe, but I know exactly the feeling y'all are all talking about. So the producers read the screenplay that night, and 2 days later offered Wan and Winnell creative control and 25% of the net profits. Even though Wan and Winnell received better offers from studios like DreamWorks and Gold Circle Films, they were not willing to chance Wan's directing and Winnell acting in the lead role. So Twisted Pictures was the only one that said, yeah, that's fine, do that. So they went with them. Imagine what this film would have looked like had something like DreamWorks done it.
No, absolutely not. No, thank you.
It would have been probably a lot more expensive looking.
Yes.
There is that, but I also think, I mean, well, we'll get into it, but I think the way it's shot to cover up for the lack of budget is actually integral to the style of the entire franchise. So I don't think it would be Saw as we know it.
No, it wouldn't be, but I do think that's interesting, right? Like, so much of it, they didn't make this film going, okay, this is going to be the style we do, and if we get sequels, this is what it's going to be going forward. It's just, we don't have enough money, do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I mean, yeah, we'll get into it, but that's what makes it so special.
Yeah.
Well, no, and so the amount of money that went into this. So basically, in order to finance the film, Hoffmanberg and Cools put up a second mortgage on their Highland Avenue headquarters, and they gave the film a production budget of around $1 to $1.2 million. With a shooting budget of $700,000, Saw began principal photography in September of 2003, and they shot for 18 days. The bathroom was the only set that had to be built. Danny Glover completed his scenes in 2 days.
Shocker.
Yep.
Due to the tight shooting schedule, Wan could not afford to shoot more than about 2 takes per actor, which I think when we talk about a lot of the acting in this film, or quote-unquote acting in this film, that's going to be a real reason for it. So, honestly, rewatching it this week, I mean, I've seen this movie so many times, because this is one of those franchises where every time a new sequel came out, I marathoned all the films like leading up to it. So I've marathoned this franchise, like, be it piecemeal or as a whole, at least like 6 or 7 times in my life.
Well, you have to, because the continuity. So, I mean, it's just fun to rewatch them anyway, but it's like, this is a franchise you can't afford to forget details of, strangely enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, do y'all think this is something where you can jump in with, like, let's say you just, I mean, I'll call in Kill by Kill again, because they watched the 4th one randomly, but hadn't seen 2 or 3, and they had seen 1, like, when it came out. So it's like, I feel like that would just, you'd be so lost trying to watch that movie.
Oh my god, the twist for 4 is ruined if you watch it first. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
The twist
How
in
dare
4,
you.
like, yeah, it's absolutely not. No, they're a franchise, you have to watch all of them.
Yeah.
Like, arguably, you could say, like, no, I don't know. I can't even make an argument.
Well, no, I was
No.
going to say that if you had to skip 1, I think 5 is the most skippable. But even then, there's stuff that happens that you need to know for the 6th movie.
Yeah, first of all, watch 5. It's awesome. But second of all,
No.
No, it's not.
I mean, watch it, but it's not awesome.
Yeah, it's not. It's bottom half of the franchise, but
listen,
sure,
agree
go
to
off.
disagree. But, but yeah, the twists, no, they all reference each other so much that, like, you definitely need to watch all of them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, so Wan said he wanted to make it in a Hitchcockian style of filmmaking, but because
Cute.
that style of filmmaking takes time to set up and so forth, they had to make it more gritty and rough around the edges due to the lack of time and money that they had to shoot the movie with, which ultimately became the aesthetic of the film, intentionally / unintentionally so. Yeah.
I mean, I think that originally what they wanted was something probably a lot like 7, which I would see then maybe the Hitchcockian elements and ideas behind that, because that is a more classically filmed film.
Right.
And this film is obviously, compared to 7, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that, but I think that that works in the film's favor almost, because then it would have felt more like a 7 ripoff, I think, if it was filmed more cleanly.
I think if the detective elements were more prominent too. I mean, again, I didn't like clock like the screen time that were in the bathroom versus the screen time that were with Danny Glover or whatever. Like, I mean, to me, 7 is like, okay, we're watching 2 cops walk around for 2 hours, which, I mean, that's a really reductionist plot of 7, which is a very good movie. But, like, that's not what this is to me. So I can see, yeah, like, oh, it's the gritty style, and there is a detective story involved. But, yeah, I can see the comparisons, but I don't really think that they're fully justified.
I feel like a lot of what makes it more similar to 7, it's not just the cops, it's about the big, beautiful deaths.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
set
pieces.
stumbling across them, because we don't spend a ton of time with the cops, but the time that we spend with them is usually them discovering these like wild deaths that were based on a vice and things like that. So I feel like that definitely makes it more 7 than its actual style. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess we'll get into it with this blue and green filter we're going to go through too.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
two-tone film.
In post-production, Wan found that he did not have enough shots or takes to work with, as he was basically shooting rehearsals. Having a lot of missing gaps in the final product, he and editor Kevin Grutert, who would go on to direct Saw 6 and I want to say Saw 7, he created shots to mend together during editing, such as making a shot look like a surveillance camera feed and using still photographs. They basically do a lot of shit to put together, which is interesting because this movie's an hour and 44 minutes long, so it's not short for a horror movie, but I guess plot-wise, they just needed to fill in holes.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, I mean, you could probably lose 20 minutes and still be fine, but I mean, yeah, I think ultimately it all ends up working. Like, when I think of the things I'd like to see maybe removed or tweaked in this film, it's not those weird insert stuff.
Juan says that he'll have people say, like, oh, wow, that's such a cool experimental style of filmmaking. And he's like, well, I mean, we didn't really mean to do that. We just had to do it.
We were time poor and cash poor.
So, did y'all know that this film premiered at Sundance?
No.
I think I did.
It is bizarre to me. And this film, so hey, fun anecdote. So first of all, Lionsgate Films picks up Saw's worldwide distribution rights at the festival days before it premiered. It premiered January 19th, 2004, and it played to a packed theater for 3 nights to a very positive reaction. Before the screenings happened, they were going to release this film direct to DVD. And after the overwhelmingly positive audience reactions from Sundance, that's when they were like, oh no, let's put this in theaters, and it would come out that October that same year. Do y'all remember much of the marketing for this movie?
I remember the trailers that they like jumped around a lot and had that like deep voiceover.
I feel like they all highlighted like the different traps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, random anecdote, but my DVD of The Punisher, the Thomas Jane version, they released like an extra special edition like when it hit DVD, which would have been around like September-ish of that year. And there was an entire bonus disc, like a second disc of The Punisher that was devoted solely to Saw and include an exclusive clip, which was the Amanda scene, and like 2 trailers and something else. And that's how I found out about Saw.
Wow.
Huh.
I mean, that's kind of savvy. I don't love the audience crossover, but obviously if you're going after young men, maybe that's the impetus. But I mean, I'm just thinking of the costs associated with that. Like, let's make a whole fucking other DVD and just smash it into this other movie that we're releasing.
Well, it worked because
So you're a sucker for that.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, basically, they wanted to get it out by Halloween. It was the closing night film of TIFF that year as well. Saw opened at number 3 on Halloween weekend 2004 with an $18.2 million gross. It opened behind, so the number 1 film that weekend was The Grudge in its second weekend, because that movie made $40 million that weekend and then $20 million.
Yeah.
I was there.
Oh, I was too for both weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I was there. I was like, I'm not going to go see Saw. I'm going to go see The Grudge, the other formative movie in my life.
I think I saw
Exactly.
The Grudge in theaters first, almost for sure.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And so this actually made it Lionsgate's second best opening ever after Fahrenheit 9/11's $23.9 million, which opened the previous summer.
Oh, they were such an upstart.
Oh, yeah. I mean, right, because I think this was still back when the Lionsgate logo was still, like, the lion with the stars in the background. Like, this is before the gear logo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, $18.2 million doesn't sound like a lot of money, but again, that's what, 9 times its production budget that it already earns back opening weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cash cow.
Oh, 100%. And the kicker is this, because most horror films tend to drop 60-ish% their second weekend. Saw dropped to the number 4 spot, so only 1 spot, making $11 million its second weekend, which is a 39% drop.
That's ridiculous. And honestly, it's all on the basis of the twist, I think. Like, people were talking about it. I remember I was at university. I went opening weekend, because obviously. And it was so bitchy. I was like super pumped for this. But I remember hearing conversations of people throughout the week being like, I did not see it coming. I'm going to have to go back and watch it again. Like, people were already talking about repeat viewings in that first week.
Yeah. I remember that very distinctly because I feel like part of why The Grudge was so popular is that The Ring was like the scariest movie anyone had ever seen in theaters.
Right.
And then The Grudge was like gonna be just like it. You know what I mean? It was like another Japanese horror adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was so much buzz. So everyone ran to see The Grudge, which was fine. And then the people that saw we're talking about this twist you could not have seen coming, and then it was like, okay, next weekend we're all seeing Saw.
That's real. No, that's interesting because, and we've talked about this before, so I apologize for listeners who have to hear this again. But the three trends in the aughts, the big ones, it's J-horror, it's torture porn, and it's the slasher remake. So with The Ring, it's like, oh my god, it's the scariest thing ever. With Saw, it's oh my god, the twist. With the slasher remakes, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's like, oh my god, it's this true story, and it's so intense. So I just love that like these three starters for these major trends in the 2000s are like, well, all really good films.
Also, Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake has house pigs, and Saw has a pig mask. I'm just gonna make the connection.
Clearly, we are suckers for pigs. Yeah.
Yes.
So Saw comes to gross $55.1 million in the United States, again against its budget of $1.2 million, which is bananas. And it grosses $47.9 million in other markets for a worldwide total of $103 million. It is the second lowest grossing film in the series after Saw 6, because Saw 6 is the lowest grossing film in the franchise. At the time, it became the most profitable horror film after Scream.
And then Paranormal Activity comes out.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's Blumhouse, so that's a whole nother story.
Well, and then just change the horror genre for the next 20 years.
Yeah. But I do love the fact that there was a time where I remember it was like, it wasn't if it was Halloween, it must be Saw. It was, fuck yes, it's Halloween, which means we are guaranteed to get a Saw film and a Paranormal Activity film. Like, It was catnip candy for horror fans.
I remember like standing outside the movie theater, and there were always the Saw posters. They were always so prominent.
Oh
like
my
I remember
God,
the cut
yes.
fingers, and like I probably have on some like flip phone, cell phone photos of me posing in front of Saw posters outside of the theater.
But I think too, I think the marketing, because I do think a lot of people that write this off as just torture porn haven't actually seen the movie, or they saw it when it came out and just remember it being so much more gruesome than it actually is. Because the marketing for these movies were marketing torture porn. You know, like the second movie has the two fingers. This one has a severed foot, obviously. The third one has teeth, I think.
Yeah, teeth. My favorite is the fourth one because it's literally Jigsaw's head on the autopsy weighing table. I fucking loved it. I love the marketing for these movies. I always, every September I would be like, drop that new poster, baby. I want to see it.
Drop that poster with a body part.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Give it to me.
So reception was relatively mixed from critics, at least, but not as bad as you might think. So it actually has a flat 50% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 185 reviews, with an average rating of 5.6 out of 10. Metacritic, we're looking at a 46 out of 100, but here's the kicker too, because normal people like this movie. Letterboxd, we're looking at a score of 7 out of 10.
Okay, name and shame these critics is what I... You know.
So
they're mainstream, they're not genre.
I did pull a few quotes. So, Variety. A crude concoction sewed together from the severed parts of prior horror/serial killer picks, too hyperbolic to be genuinely disturbing.
Ugh, gag.
Roger Ebert gave it 2 out of 4. He lamented the gimmicks and plot contrivances, but nonetheless described Saw as well-made and acted, and does what it does about as well as it could be expected to. The Telegram Gazette called Saw one of the most loathsome films this critic has seen in more than 20 years on the job.
Oh, get over yourself.
I mean, I get it. I get why people were so against this film is because I don't think a lot of people enjoyed low-budget horror at the time. I think that there is a gruesomeness to it that people weren't used to anymore because of the 90s. And the films that were horror films that were produced during the 90s. This was like the start of a revolution that a lot of people didn't like. And I really think that people need to rethink torture porn. And I know that the name is like awful, but it is. I mean, yes, we all hate Eli Roth, but I don't think torture porn as a genre should be as picked on as much.
I mean, the thing with why, I mean, I'll defend Hostel Part 2 till the day I die. Y'all feel free to disagree with me. For me, the phrase torture porn means a movie that relishes in watching people suffer and being tortured. I don't ever really get the feeling that any of these movies, or most of these movies, like, they show torture, but they're not, like, relishing in the torture.
I think as the franchise ages, we definitely lean into it because the traps get increasingly ridiculous. Like,
Right.
I do think that there's an element of suffering in this, but you could argue that that's in part due to the morality of Jigsaw and what he is trying to put people through so that they appreciate life. I've never really loved his rationale. I actually think he's a bit of a sadist, if we're being honest.
Yeah, rationales.
Yeah, it's questionable at best.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I lean a little bit more towards what Jenny said, which is I think it was easy for people to slap a torture porn label because they knew that it would automatically rankle a bunch of people. Like, oh, well, this is a way to make sure that these despicable films, I'm using air quotes right now,
Right.
it's a way to diminish them and say, oh, well, if you like them, then you don't have taste, or you're abhorrent, or there's something wrong with you. Like, I think it was a way for civilized people to say, well, these films aren't worth your time, so let's make them sound torture.
But don't y'all think that's something that the horror genre has gone through, like, every decade? Like, that was
Yeah,
happening in the 80s. Like, that video Nazis and shit, you know?
I really wanted to bring that up because actually I think I did a really, really good podcast, plugging a podcast I did like 7 years ago on Saw and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
And Texas Chainsaw Massacre had the same kind of visceral reaction that a lot of people had to the first Saw film and the preceding ones.
Mhm.
The thing is the Saw franchise did what it did a lot better than the Texas Chainsaw franchise, but we'll get to that another time.
Hot takes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would argue that the sequels of Saw were a lot more successful than the sequels of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. At least in
That's
terms
kind of what
money.
I'm getting at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
I think that they're more successful as far as continuity and overall like monetary success.
Actually, Jenny, please. So while Lindsay is making this master timeline of the Saw franchise, I challenge you to go make a master timeline of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
Oh, no.
Why would you hurt me like that?
Jenny, he doesn't love you.
Also, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like one of my favorite films of all time. So I'm not like saying it's a bad movie and Saw
No.
is better. I'm saying that they're very similar.
Right. And we just covered that on Patreon, and we actually talked a lot about the reception in terms of, like, it was getting a lot of the same things that Saw got.
Wait, I think Jenny's talking about the original, though, right?
Yeah. I'm talking about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre that came out in the 70s.
Okay. Sorry, I'm talking about the 03 version.
Oh, yeah. I've compared like this, like a lot of people in the 70s weren't a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre when it came out, but it also was a politically driven
Mm-hmm.
Right.
film in its time, and also honestly just as gruesome, if not more, than Saw.
I mean, in the same way, people think that it's far more gruesome than it actually is.
Well, again, it's one of those things, too, where I feel like because the sequels of Saw lean so much heavier into the gore, like, if you haven't seen... Because I will confess, I actually rewatched this one, like, one of the least. I do think it ranks in the top half of the franchise for me, but, like, I don't ever really want to watch it as much because... I don't even know if I want to say it's slower paced, but it's just, like...
It's just not as bonkers.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
more procedural.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's less like fun, silly. I don't know. I don't know, on the torture porn thing, I do just want to kind of jump on that bit about how, yeah, I feel like we always throw things like that at horror movies to make them seem less than, like, you just dismiss it as torture porn, kind of dismiss it as horror. So I kind of don't, like, get offended, or I don't want to say offended, but, like, I don't get upset if someone dismisses something as torture porn, because I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's the same old being a horror fan, you know,
Right.
getting brushed off, and we're the goth kids, or whatever you want to call us. We're the offbeat kids. We love our offbeat genre, or whatever you want to say, even though it's very, very mainstream, but that's a whole discussion for a whole other day. But yeah, the torture porn thing, like, yeah, the first one has almost no gore in it. There's a giant pool of blood that's not even blood. So it's like, okay, there's not a lot of blood. And I think you're coming off of Scream, where you have that big opening scene that's pretty gross with the guts. But other than that, like, Scream is also pretty goreless. It's a pretty clean, tidy movie. And yeah, these definitely get torture porny later. I also just think as a phrase, it doesn't mean very much. Like, is it torture porn if it doesn't relish in it, or does relish in it? And is Eli Roth's work more torture porny than Saw? Like, I don't know. I just think it's like, I don't know.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
But, like, even, like, so in 2004, because we don't have Hostel 1 or 2, we don't have these Saw sequels. So I guess at the time, yeah, like, we're looking back, like, well, look at how much gorier the sequels are. But I guess maybe in 2004, people were like, no, but this is, like, too intense for us or something. I don't know.
I think we thought we had rounded a corner when we entered the new millennium, and it was like, oh, no, we're not making these kinds of movies anymore. But it's like, well, we're also living, as we've mentioned repeatedly, in a world that is recovering from a very dramatic, politicized war effort, whether, not to get into the...
Yeah.
Yeah. But basically, like, there's a lot of residual trauma. And the fact that people who like a lot of 80s movies don't like these movies, I find ironic, because we had the same conversations in the 80s, which is like Reaganomics and Thatcher and all of the conservative ideologies. Like, it's a lot of the same. Like, these conservative eras and the war-torn eras tend to produce more visceral, more thrilling, more gory films.
Well, and let's also not discredit the fact that this is also, while it is an American film, it's written and directed and created entirely by 2 Australians.
But I think that when you relate a lot of these films to a certain time period, like this is a post 9/11 film particularly, it mostly actually is a reference to the audience and why people gravitate towards these kinds of films.
Yeah.
But also 9/11 affected the entire world, not just the US. And
Right.
I think Australia, I mean, given they weren't really involved in the... Maybe they were involved in the war. I actually don't know about this about Australia. But
they're a
don't
peaceful
really...
folk.
But I think it's telling that, like, you couldn't get the movie made in Australia. You had to come to the US to get the funding to make a movie like this.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, I think the audience craved a kind of like visceral kind of like release in a sense in a post 9/11 world where all this stuff is like, you read it in the newspaper and you kind of want it to, you want it something like that will like, that you crave, like you kind of crave a film like Saw, like, and I think that a lot of like people who were, you say the goth kids, and usually the goth kids were the more liberally minded kids in your high school, like them gravitating towards this kind of film, it makes sense almost.
Well, and horror has always been about catharsis, right? Like, for people who
Yeah.
are into horror, like, we go for that emotional release. And this time period was very much a time of stress. Like, everyone was like, I mean, again, like, terrorism was constant. I mean, sorry, not happening, but like the fear of terrorism was constant. So I can see why it's, a movie's going harder. I want something harder that's going to like make me feel something, because I'm tired of being afraid all the time because of what the media is telling me about whatever fucking like whatever. So yeah, I think that also played a part into the success of this film, on top of, oh my god, that twist.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, and without trying to veer into what Spiral's going to do and what the rest of the franchise does, I think it's really interesting that the cops get really hurt in this movie. I think that, I don't know exactly what it's trying to say or what the intention was, or if it was a climate thing, but we've got cops chasing a killer who thinks that he's not a killer, and they're all getting pretty injured and failing. And I think that's probably something that I would say is political and speaks to a political climate, and I imagine it's something that's going to really matter. It really matters in the follow-ups, and I think it's really going to matter in the upcoming movie that you've all already seen called Spiral.
I mean, it's amusing, right? Because one of the things that came out of our watch party is that we started to do this hypothetical, like, where is this movie set, right? Because they never really say what the town is. And we made a joking reference that we should do a Saw City spin-off. And it would just be an awful place to live, because every person is corrupt. You can't trust the police. Literally, you're in danger of being, set up into a trap for the most mundane of offenses to Jigsaw, right? Like you cut him off coming out of the grocery store parking lot, and you end up in a trap like 5 movies from now.
Because you just don't appreciate life.
I mean, Saw City is like, it's Hepatitisville. There's like, everything is a warehouse. No one lives in a regular apartment, and no office is in a regular apartment. It's like all high rises, all cement. There's a dingy river, maybe.
It's never daytime.
And a Chinese market that's randomly outside that celebrates like Chinese New Year once.
Chinese New Year. And for like the first until the third film, we don't know what outside looks like at all.
No, this is a world entirely comprised of interiors. A, because it's too expensive to shoot outside, but
we don't know what anything looks like on the outside, except for like one picture of the outside of a warehouse.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, when we get to the fucking cars.
Cars in Saw City.
Well, okay, do we want to have any more general discussion before we get to the plot?
I think we should jump in.
All right, yeah, so that's a good cue. So, I mean, let's go into what this movie is about.
Okay.
I also should point out, I took like the least amount of notes I've ever taken for a film on this. Like, I have like 3/4 of a page of notes because I was like, well, there's 4 of us, but I've also like, I feel like I've seen this movie so many times.
I thought you're like, I know the plot.
Yeah.
But it's surprisingly convoluted. Like, I remember making a note to say, okay, there's a key that Dr. Gordon finds, who is the Cary Elwes character early on, right? Like, he and Adam, Lee Winnell, they wake up in this blue-tinged bathroom. There's this dead body who will later be revealed to be Tobin Bell. And they each find that there's tapes, and Dr. Gordon has a key. And I remember being like, oh, right, there's a key. That'll be important later. And it's like, this movie is just filled with little details where you do need to pay attention, but there's also so many moving parts that none of it kind of matters.
The number of times I've seen this, watching it again this time, and it was during the glow-in-the-dark X thing, and I want to say the heart on the toilet. I was like, this is a video game. This literally plays out just like a video game.
No, it's an escape room.
I was going to say, I love that that's where your brain went. I definitely went to escape room.
Every escape room owes their success to a movie called Saw.
I mean, there actually were 2 Saw video games released in the 2002 for PlayStation and like
that
stuff.
is also true.
I don't think I want to play this as a video game, but I would love to do it as an escape room with you folks.
But do you think it would be like true to continuity and we would just be like out of there in 25 seconds?
Unfortunately, we had to kill Jenny to get out, but yeah.
Lindsay's foot off,
bitches,
but
you aren't killing me. I'm the queen of Saw City. You can't kill me.
Yeah, no, I would be the first one. I have very low pain tolerance, and you can't really put me through many trials without me giving up, so I'm done.
Ugh. No, I would wake up and I would do the Adam thing where I accidentally flush the key.
Right.
And then I'd be like, oh, we're screwed, and just leave. I would like push the red button.
No, that's the thing. So when you know the ending of this movie and it starts, again, like you see the key. Hey, I love the ending. I love that it's water, but it's like Adam is fucked from the get-go of this movie.
Yeah, right out the gate, he's toast.
He is literally, he is already lost, and I'm like, well, that's not really a smart thing to do, Jigsaw. Like, that's real dumb.
You know what that kind of reminds me of? You know, you say video game, it's like those games like Until Dawn, where like all your choices matter for your ending, and it's like the first choice Adam made just completely blew it for him.
Yeah.
You chose and then he just wasted the next 2 hours.
Well, that's the thing. Jigsaw doesn't always. Sometimes he plays fair, but sometimes he doesn't. And
he
mostly does not play fair.
Mostly does not play fair.
Yeah, it's yeah. But in this film, I mean, well, we'll get to the traps because I guess Amanda got out. But it's like the poor guy with the numbers in the safe. I was just like, oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you're gonna get to it, but I have like really powerful feelings about the safe.
Okay. No, we will get to it. We will 100% get to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the big thing from this early scene is that they each have a bit of a mission. Adam doesn't really have one. It's just like, oh, hey, you're a dirty, dirty voyeur. And Dr. Gordon, however, has like full-blown fucking instructions. It's like, you need to kill Adam by 6 p.m. I've got your wife, who is played by Monica Potter. I've got your daughter, Diana, who is played by Mackenzie Vega. And there's also an X that marks the spot. And also you're playing a game, go.
I'm not gonna lie, though. If I'm Gordon in this situation, Adam is dead in like 3 seconds.
Absolutely.
I guess the issue is that Gordon doesn't really love his wife, and sometimes he loves his daughter when he's not going off to screw his med student.
No. I think that's unfair, because we're saying that just because someone is cheating on their spouse, and just because someone is maybe not the most attentive parent means they don't love their family, and that is not the case. I mean, it makes him a shitty human being, but I do still think he loves them.
Fair enough, yes. So we also have a plastic bag that is discovered in the toilet. It contains 2 saws, but it is not meant to cut through their chains, only their limbs.
That was the hook, though, right? Like, that Cary Elwes' delivery of, he doesn't want us to cut through our chains, he wants us to cut through our feet. That was, like, I feel like in every trailer for this film.
Oh, yeah. It's a good hook, right?
Hell yeah.
So let's transition away from the blue and go to green as we get our 3 detectives, only one of whom matters. They are Detective Tapp, played by Danny Glover. We have Detective Singh, who is played by Ken Lung. And then we have just the briefest glimpse of Detective Cary, who is played by Dina Meyer.
like, I know Dina Meyer is not a superstar, but she is more famous than some of the people in this movie.
Like, Ken Lung was only known for what? He was on Lost for like a hot second, was he not?
But after this, he was on Lost for season 4 and probably some of the rest of it too. But
okay.
But she'll get more to do.
yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately for her.
Mm.
Right. Ugh. 3. You did my girl dirty.
Mhm.
Okay, but it's sick. It's a memorable kill.
Oh,
It is, but it's also like, hey, do you remember this woman? Because we barely used her and now she's dead.
Yeah.
well, she has a pretty decent part in Saw 2. It's just that
Yeah.
she's second fiddle to Donnie Wahlberg.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh boy, I will say this franchise loves its shitty white men.
It likes boring vanilla
Cops.
cops.
Hmm. Yeah. It's kind of funny that Danny Glover ends up being one of the better ones when we think back on it.
I mean, the protagonist of Saw 4 is a black cop too.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
That's right.
But I don't like him either.
No, he's bad. I don't like him either.
I mean, all cops are bad.
there you go.
This is true.
That's,
Yeah.
that's
That's what it
Saw.
is.
That's Saw in a nutshell.
That's what
Uh-huh.
it is.
Yep.
Okay, so as these 3 are introduced, we learn that they are on the case of a jigsaw killer who sticks people into traps, and the first one we see is an obese man who is stuck in barbed wire, and then the other one is a self-immolated person who was covered in a flammable substance and forced to try to solve... Lindsay, what is this? What the fuck is happening here?
So he's covered in a flammable substance and he's holding a candle, which is his only light source. So he has to be very careful with it.
I mean, the room is pretty green. I think there's green lights everywhere in this room.
Well, we see it with green lights, but he only has a candle.
No, I'm aware. I'm aware.
So don't correct me, Trace. And then there's glass all over the floor because, again, Jigsaw pretending like he's not actually hurting these people is cute.
Mhm.
But there's glass all over the floor just for fun. And the key to get him out of there is in a safe. And the possible combination to the safe is written on the walls, but the walls are covered in a whole bunch of numbers. So he doesn't know where it starts and ends. And he kind of has to run around and find these numbers with a candle.
This is impossible, is it not?
It's impossible.
He doesn't even space the numbers, so you don't know which. Like again, we're like, it's a 2-digit and 1-digit. Like, where do you start?
It is an impossible task. It makes no sense. I can't see why he wouldn't just... he would probably have better luck just spinning the thing randomly as long as he had to, like, for as long as he had.
Yeah, because of course we see him moving around as though, if I do this fast enough, I can solve this before I light myself up. And you're just like, no, man, it's not. No.
And he moves in an unorganized way. Like, it shows him, like, moving all over the room back and forth when you would probably go, like, okay, first 4 digits.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second, second one, and then the next 3 digits.
Is this also a slow-acting poison that he's racing against the clock?
Oh, right, yes.
Is it a poison?
Yeah.
Or is it it's a poison.
Yeah,
I was like, or is it a
because-
locked door? No, it's an antidote.
The barbed
Yeah.
wire has the locked door because he has to
Yeah,
get out
yeah,
before
right.
3 o'clock and the door shuts, which I feel like I could do that one, but I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of, there's a slow-acting poison coursing through your veins.
Yeah, there's always a slow like, as if he can time these poisons. There's always a clock. Like, he's a very good poison maker because he always knows exactly how long it's going to take to kill someone. Despite, like, your height. Even in Saw 2, like, everyone's different height and weight. And
Yeah.
their metabolisms are all different, but it's like you all have the same
I
clock.
want to see the project management software that he uses to keep all of this in check.
Oh, once again, if you know by the time Saw 1 is happening, how many traps are happening simultaneously, it is absurd to imagine that he had this all organized. But Therese, I'm just saying, knowing you and I and, like, our spreadsheet nonsense, like, we would absolutely be fine. Like,
Oh
we could
yeah, no,
totally
I mean,
do
like,
that.
it's insane. Like, I mean, it exists. There is a file somewhere in some kind of project management software that Jigsaw has in
That Jigsaw's been
2004.
using to,
I'm
like,
just picturing
this-
Jigsaw on Slack with like Hoffman and Amanda like, okay, just a reminder, you need to be there by 2 p.m.
signing work. Who wants to take on the reverse bear trap redux?
I really want to do that one where the girl's head is in the vase and then it fills with water.
I'm assigning that one to you, Detective Strong.
But I've also got to put these envelopes in a box for my wife, who's going to come into play later.
Right.
God.
Like I said, it's very convoluted. But
Also, Amanda had a part in that death. I mean, in that bit.
she had a part right out the gate. She talked to Adam, dude.
Well, I mean, honestly, that retcon makes. I'm sorry, I know we're getting on the sequels, but because Jigsaw's a bit ableist because he's sitting here like making this girl basically gonna kill a girl for being a drug addict.
Yeah, like a bit. So, he literally, yeah. You don't appreciate life. You're sad.
Yeah. So at least they kind of kiboshed that with the retcon when they were like, oh, actually, no, she had like she was second fiddle to like his wife's miscarriage or whatever.
Ugh.
Right.
It gets dark. It goes to a lot of different places. Thankfully, not in this film. This film is still relatively straightforward.
There you go.
Okay, yeah. So that's our basic introduction to Jigsaw, and then, you know, we do some fun stuff. We were introduced actually to Amanda shortly after we were introduced to Dr. Gordon's past. You know, it's meant to be, if you're paying close attention, you'll notice that we're introduced to Zeb, who is played by Michael Emerson, and actually the patient in the bed is John Kramer, who is Tobin Bell, aka Jigsaw. And it's the kind of funny thing where after you've seen it once, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so now we're getting a flashback within a flashback with this Amanda shit, though. And
yeah.
Also, though, cops are terrible because we have Danny Glover being like this smarmy fucking ass with a pen. I know they have to follow leads. Why do they automatically think that because this doctor's pen was at the crime scene that he's possibly the murderer?
Oh, because it's a poorly written cop story. No, you would question everyone that you wouldn't necessarily think that he was the killer per se, but you would question everyone that, had a connection to the scene. The other thing is, I won't wax about the whole CSI effect, but we also, because we watch so many procedural shows like CSI, we all tend to think that like criminals are really, really smart and that they don't leave things behind, and like DNA, that would never happen, or without DNA, anyway. The idea in reality, like someone would totally just leave their pen.
I'm just saying, like, it could be any of his patients that were in his office that took his pen. It's like personalized pens for people to sign things. I don't know, whatever. Move on.
Fair.
Yes, but because of this, he is in the police precinct, so he is privy then to Amanda's story, who is played by Shawnee Smith, and we then get to see her experience as she recounts her encounter with Billy the Puppet, a bear trap, a scalpel, and some intestines.
I mean, it's iconic, right?
It really is.
When did Billy get his name?
Is it in the next movie? Because Billy is how I know my baby.
Your baby
puppet.
boy.
You know?
Sweet Billy boy.
I love the puppet. I think it's such an inspired thing. I mean, when you go on to see Dead Silence, you're like, oh, I think these two just have a thing for creepy dolls, things that are on wheels that can be moved back and forth. It's kind of their shtick, but I think that there's something so creepy about it that it just really works.
I mean, Juan's social handles are all creepy puppet.
Right. That is true.
Oh, yeah, no, it says, although it has never actually been identified in the films, Billy is the name by which it is referred to by writers, directors, and members of the cast and crew on documentaries and interviews.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought. Every time, I always try to clock when they call it Billy, and then every time I think I've missed it.
Yeah, they always just say, like, creepy puppet.
I mean, the best part is living with Jigsaw, the YouTube video, like, series after, and working with Jigsaw. Like, I cried when I first saw those. Icon.
Oh, yeah.
Icon.
We'll have to share those when this episode drops, because it is hilarious. This is the scene, though, where I was saying where it's like, this is the goriest the movie gets, because we do have a really quick shot of Amanda not only fiddling with the intestines, but then putting her hand in the stomach that she pulls out.
Yeah, but I mean, when people are talking about torture porn, they're not actually talking about the gore. They're talking about the sustained torture. So, like, people would think of Adam and Dr. Gordon's treatment within the bathroom as the torture.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, for sure. I guess I just think about, like, oh, it's, like, so gross. I'm like, okay, well, that's, like, the grossest thing in this movie is this. Like, it's not... Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because you're right, though. This is the bloodiest, really, that we ever get.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so speaking of the bathroom, this is where we hop back. This is where we discover that they're being monitored through a two-way mirror. Someone is watching them. We get the iconic line, "This is the most fun I've had without lubricant." Okay.
The dialogue in this film.
My God.
I mean, obviously, Lee Winnell has improved his writing skills, but a lot of... I mean, I get that Adam's supposed to be this douchebag character, but oh my God, there's not good dialogue. for him.
Yeah, okay.
You're like, I'll allow it.
I mean, we tolerate it because Adam's hot. Like, Lee Winella's hot and fuckable, so we're like, okay, well, I guess fine.
Is that why? I don't know. I just feel like his
Are
characters...
we sure?
I know. I'm like, okay.
Okay, some of us think that he's hot and fuckable.
I think he's hot.
You know who's hot and fuckable? James Wan is hot and fuckable.
James Wan is also
We can talk
hot. I
about
think
that.
they're both hot. Also, Cary Elwes is hot, but... Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but I also feel like I don't want much out of it. I think if he wasn't delivering it so poorly... Well, oh no, now I'm just dumping on our best friend.
No, I mean, look,
I'm like, it's written poorly and he says it even worse. But I think, like, Tobin Bell is so good. And he doesn't do a lot of talking in the first movie, but ultimately he ends up delivering, like, really, really terrible dialogue in ways that only work because he's saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's, like, easy to now be like, oh, man, all the rest of the dialogue is so junk. I mean, not that 1L wrote the rest of them, but that it seems really junky. But I don't know if it really is or if it's just kind of, like, fine and the acting is just fine. I don't know.
So is the argument that Tobin Bell is actually the most hot and fuckable then?
What?
Is he the winner? I'm just kidding.
I mean, he's, like, in his underwear the whole movie. He looks great.
With the acting, though, I mean, we'll reiterate though, you know, like they had 2 takes per person. They used the better of the 2 takes. Like, I'm sorry, per scene, per shot, whatever. They used the better of the one. So like they didn't have a lot of options. They were using rehearsal footage to put in this movie because they didn't. I mean, it wasn't rehearsals. They just filmed it. So again, like knowing that, I cut it slack. It doesn't mean that I think there's good line delivery in this movie for half of its runtime, but I can cut it slack because I'm aware of the circumstances under which they were working.
Yeah. Okay, so we get a little bit more with Gordon. So we see that, you know, he's not winning Dad of the Year awards because he just kind of brushes off his daughter's concern that there's a scary man in her room. And then, of course, when he leaves later, we discover that there is, in fact, a scary man in his daughter's room, and his wife and daughter get tied up. And we see that it is this orderly Zepp.
Well, do we?
Yes, we see him again.
Yes.
Wait.
I feel like you didn't see any faces upon rewatch.
Trace, do you have facial blindness?
No, no. Hey, we see his eye in the Black Christmas homage, which I'm assuming that's what that is. But when the mom walks in, he's like covered in a blanket when he grabs the daughter. We don't see his face. When they're tied up to the bottom of the bed, like the camera stays below his chin purposefully.
You know, you're right, because I think we're supposed to think it is the mastermind behind everything.
Yeah. Like, don't y'all come at me about not watching this movie.
But we see his face.
No, but we see
Eventually,
yeah, but not until later.
I think maybe it's just because I know who it is, so I'm like reconstructing it. I'm like, oh, I see him in like the slightest of profile. I recognize that face. That's Michael Emerson.
But here's the thing though. 2004, Michael Emerson, like no one knows who Michael Emerson is. I'm sorry, like he's a great actor. I love him. He's done a lot of great things. In 2004 though, no one going to see Saw knows who Michael Emerson is. Mm-hmm. He is just the one guy in the one scene as the orderly. So like looking at it now, like when you see the Black Christmas eye, it's like, oh, that's clearly Michael Emerson's eye. Like good for them for using the same actor. But it's not like a tell if you're watching this movie at the time.
Right.
But I will also say that the little girl staring in the corner of blackness is a very, very effective scare. Like it's not a scare because there's no jump there, but like it's really creepy.
Now, Trace, we've talked about this. You can have a scare without the jump scare.
There you go.
Because you're right, it is scary. And I think that's one of the reasons why I tend to come down a little harder on the dialogue and the acting is because Wan is actually really good at delivering scares. Some of them jump scares, some of them like this, a little bit more just kind of creepy and unnerving. And he shoots a lot of the action when they're not doing the sort of raggedy, jaggedy insert stuff. Like a lot of this is actually really good. You can see the genesis of where he'll go when he gets money and time to make the movies he wants to make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easy to see why he has the career he does now, right? Because they're like, oh, you can do this with $1 million? Like, what can you do with
80 days? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the part where we also realize that Detective Tapp is watching all of this fucking shit go down from the building across the street, because ladies and gentlemen, Saw City, every building is like directly connected or like a 2-minute drive away. And this is where we get
They're
his
all
story.
warehouses.
Yes, they're all warehouses.
It's literally in the warehouse district of the city.
The city is the warehouse district.
Also true.
So this is where we flash back and we get Tap's story. So where did this obsession with Jigsaw come from? And we learn that it's basically because Detective Singh got killed when they thought they had a lead. And I do love the fact that there's this diorama of the bathroom from the present day. Because I'm like, oh, there we go. Jigsaw and his fucking diorama.
Okay, but he made little people.
An artiste, guys. I mean, he made a puppet. Come on. Our man, he knows how to, like, make a scrapbook, probably.
But, like,
He's
what
crafty.
can't this man do? He can make a puppet. He can make traps. He can make poisons.
Yeah, they act like he's an engineer, which is just man speak for artsy and crafty.
But, like, okay, I get maybe making a diorama of the room because, okay, cool, like, this thing's gonna go here. But why do you need to make little clay people to put in this little diorama?
Because how do you
Because
know where the
he's
people
great.
go?
Do I put them on the left side or the right side?
No, when he brings them into the bathroom, he actually has the diorama on a shelf, and he's like, okay, let me like match this exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of course.
I mean, in a way, though, he has thought through so many of these things, right? Because he had to think about, okay, where do I lay down so that Adam can get me with his shirt and also the drain plumber so that he can, like, scoop up the tape recorder. Like, he thought through all of these little details.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, guys, look, this movie is supposed to be based in the 90s. He couldn't make the diorama on a computer. Had to do it in person.
Right.
He had to do it like a little arts and crafts project.
Wait, it's based in the 90s?
I assume so. I always assumed it was late 90s.
Oh, I mean, not saying you're wrong, I just never thought about that.
Well, I assumed that after Saw 3D.
Interesting. Explain.
Because there's a flashback and it feels very early 90s.
Oh, okay. We're basing this off a flashback and Saw 3D. Okay.
God.
Nothing in that
I'm
movie
basing
makes
this
sense.
off my flashback, and I'm like, this has to... I also think I have seen, like, a graphic that places all of Saw in the 90s.
Lindsay, can you confirm
Lindsay,
or
yeah.
deny?
I'm literally biting my tongue so hard. Okay, I've laughed so loudly this whole podcast. Enjoy. I think that it's always intentionally been kind of an ambiguous timeline, only
Right.
because with all of the retconning and overlapping and where people land, we tend to get really old video cameras. Like, even in Saw 3D, we have, like, an old camcorder
Right.
being used by, what's his name, the Boondock Saints guy?
Sean Patrick Flannery.
What are the phones like in this movie? I can't...
We
like,
don't get a lot of
right
phones.
now.
We don't get a lot of phones in the movie.
Yeah, that's also another thing where I assume
These-
it's the 90s because there's not a lot of cell phone talk.
But there is, so Dr. Gordon has the flip phones, but then
Right.
there's those things which are super 90s where he's like, this phone only is meant to take calls, not
Send them
make
out.
outgoing calls, which seems so silly when you
Oh.
watch it now, but that was legitimately
Mhm.
a thing. Like, I had my phone in, I think, grade 9, could only receive text messages, it couldn't send them.
Yep.
Like, those things were legit.
My only argument for it not being the 90s is because in 1997, Romy and Michelle has the brick cell phones. Like, we weren't getting these tiny flip phones in
Right.
the late 90s.
No, but I had a cell phone in the year 2000 because my parents were like, oh my God, you're going to university in a different
Yeah.
province. I need to pack you away with this. And it wasn't the brick that we see in Romeo and Michelle, but it was like not quite as small as the flip. So it's like, the technology it's of a questionable age.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always read it as not like necessarily being in the 90s, but always kind of keeping it a little bit vague. Just like the city. Like, we've watched 100 of these movies and no one's ever had a close-up of the cop's badge to know what city it's in.
Mhm.
No one ever names where they are. They, like, rarely say a street name. You know what I mean? So I think it's just one of those things that's kind of vague so that they can mess with timeline and...
Oh, for sure.
So it's timeless.
That's going to be the thing, though, right? Like, because at this point, if we don't know, like, if they don't apply labels, meaning this year, this month, this day, whatever the fuck, like, all they have to do is say, cool, this takes place before this and after this in the
Mhm.
film chronology. But as soon as you start applying numbers and dates to it, then it becomes like, oh shit, like,
Yeah.
I've lost track.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's just vague. Which, again, probably wasn't contemplated when they wrote this movie. But I
No.
feel like it's vague ultimately on purpose.
But also, just to clarify, Saw City is Toronto because all of these motherfucking movies were shot in Canada.
Canada, Toronto, what's
Hey,
up?
an hour and 15 minutes. You made it that long.
Okay, guys, I actually found the graphic. The flashback is in 1995, so it does place the movies actually when they come out, like in the 2000s.
Okay.
But that flashback is in 1995.
There you go.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you're still right.
There we go. So part of this franchise does take place in the 90s.
Oh, and Saw 2 takes place in 2005.
Well, that's when it comes out.
Like, so yeah, when it came down, yeah.
Oh, dear. Shall we talk about the fact that Singh is just shot in this, like, terrible knot trap, and it's really underwhelming?
It's a trap-ish.
I agree. It lacks the, well, I was going to say it lacks the Rube Goldbergian aspect, but that's not even present in this film.
Not as much, no.
I do like the blood splash. Like, he loses a lot of blood immediately. And I also love how haphazardly the shotguns are set up. Like, they're all crooked.
Yes. That's what I love and hate about it. Like, it's all of his traps are so messy. And, like, that's why they look much more like crafts than they look like really well engineered. Which I think is awesome.
Yeah, even this, like, this feels like not part of the plan. And I don't know whether or not Jigsaw intended, because he's got this dude, Jeff, tied up in this chair that they're trying to, Singh has to shoot out the saws that are coming towards his neck. But, like, I mean, Jigsaw gets messy and he just has to, pull a random knife out of his leg and slash Tap's throat. Like, I don't know. Do you think he planned all of this?
I mean, he has Assassin's Creed blades in his robe. Like,
Fair.
I don't. This is so bizarre. I don't think this really.
Cloak.
It's interesting. I feel like the sequels actually. I mean, I guess because they had to. Like, they take more time to really think about. Like, I mean, for the most part, kind of ish. Does this make sense?
So many concessions.
Yeah. But this one, yeah, it's kind of like. I mean, this scene is very weird to me, and I don't know how else to describe it because it just feels like. This is just set up to give Tap a motivation, right? Like, you killed my partner. That's the oldest cop trope in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's also bizarre because it doesn't really matter very much.
No.
It only matters to be like, oh my god, like that's Jigsaw. That's the killer. He's a human being because we've only really seen him as the puppet.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, like, Tap's story doesn't matter very much. Like, he's kind of a red herring when Adam is like, it was a cop, and, Gordon's like, questioning him, and then Adam has the moment where he finally describes him as a black guy who had a big scar around his neck. So that is like a cool red herring twist moment. Mm-hmm. But other than that, like, the two cops could be out of the movie and you probably wouldn't notice.
Also, more cop commentary when Singh is like, well, can we get a search warrant in time? And Tap's like, who said anything about a warrant? We're gonna go break into this motherfucker. Like, oh, I mean,
that's
god.
That's why they don't call for backup, right? It's like, we gotta go right now. And also, we don't have time to do this by the books because we're dirty.
Like, you're hunting a killer who does traps, and you walk in, guns a-blazing, not thinking there's gonna be a trap.
Mm-hmm. Shocker.
Yeah.
I mean, Saw City doesn't hire the best. We'll put it that way. So, so we're still kind of flipping back and forth between the present day and some deja vu moments. So, we find the X in the dark, and we get the flip phone and the cigarette and the coded message. So then we get Gordon's flashback as he recounts his abduction from a parking garage, and we see that there's flashes of light, which we'll later attribute to Adam's camera. I do love the scene of this pig mask figure crawling out of his back seat and it getting captured in the mirror from the parking garage.
I love the pig stuff in this movie. I mean, you get it later on and figure out why it's all pigs, but it's so creepy. Like, what good iconography, like, they decided to use, like, a creepy pig face.
Yeah, especially because we're getting, like, a new, again, I don't necessarily call them a slasher villain, but we're getting, like, this new iconic villain, so it's like, what's the mask gonna be? And so it's neat that we get, like, Billy the Puppet, and then also this, like, weird pig mask, which isn't necessarily the killer's mask, but we still get exactly, like, some new iconography, which is so cool.
I mean, I feel like a lot more people dressed up in the pig mask for Halloween than they did as Billy the Puppet for a really long time.
Yes, although I can't count the number of sexy Billy the Puppet costumes I saw in women, and I just thought, oh, this
Excuse
is
me?
so weird.
I've done that before.
Okay, folks, we'll also be posting those pictures on our Instagram, so keep an eye out for that.
I love it. Mine isn't as sexy, though, I would say, as some people, but that's also just because I had to work with what I had.
It's a Six Doom. You can really, I just said Six Doom. That wasn't on purpose. You get to just, like, draw some red spirals. Depending on who you are, you could really draw on your puppet mouth. It's awesome.
I also did it in honor of my bunny. My bunny was named Jigsaw, one of them at the time. R.I.P. Jigsaw.
Aww.
So I dressed up as her.
Oh, and then you had
Or
Jigsaw.
her puppet. Yeah. I was like Jigsaw. And we dressed up as Saw together.
Aww. So
it.
cute.
My little mastermind.
So speaking of masterminds, the moment has come for our intrepid duo in the bathroom to stage a fake murder in which Dr. Gordon poisons a cigarette and then Adam smokes it and dies. And then he gets electrocuted somehow in his chains.
Well, so this is the start of Cary Elwes' downward turn in his acting, because he's forced to scream a lot. Because this is like this is when he gets the picture of the wife and daughter, and he's just yelling at the camera, "What are you doing to them, you bastard?"
It's not his best work.
It's not his best.
What are you
work.
doing to my parenthood wife?
No, Monica Potter is not in this movie enough. I mean, I know that y'all think she's boring. Sorry, the character, not Monica Potter.
Yeah, because I cried for her on Parenthood multiple times.
Oh,
I was
for
like,
sure.
don't die of cancer.
Monica Potter's great, but like, that's the one where I'm like, that character needs to come back. Where the fuck is that character? Or we're gonna bring back like Dr. Gordon's daughter, and like she's like 25 and now a Jigsaw disciple. So yeah, it's the downward turn of Elwes, because like he's not really good for the rest of this movie. But we get this fake cigarette death from Adam, and I will confess, I used to make fun of the scene a lot, but then I'm also kind of like, yeah, but it's a douchebag guy pretending to die, so it kind of makes sense that he's acting like this.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
They also don't know if they can be heard. They know that they can't be heard.
Right.
So he's doing it for the camera, so it would make sense that he would like overact it physically.
Mhm.
And then he
Except little does he know.
he flips immediately. He's like, "Ow! I just got electrocuted."
Well, no, so the other thing is, this always confused me, because we get the electroshock sound, like the Foley work on the
Yes.
but that actually can't be heard, because Gord is mad at him, like, what are you doing? You're ruining the bit. And he's like,
Yeah.
I'm getting electrocuted.
Yeah, Gordon can't hear it. It's for our benefit.
Yeah.
Just in case. But okay, would it be more effective if we couldn't hear it and we just saw him freaking out?
No, wouldn't
No,
make any
because-
sense.
Yeah, no, we needed the twist. We needed the twist to know that Adam, like, we needed to know that Jigsaw had... Okay, because at this point, we know that Zepp is watching, and he can't hear. And when they turn off the lights, we have Zepp being like, oh no, like, I don't know what's going on now. But then someone knows immediately that Adam is faking it, so that we need to know that he was electrocuted. Like, it can't be suggested to us that Adam might be lying, because I feel like it's important that we know
that
there's
not.
someone else watching.
Well, it also prepares us for that end of movie twist, right? It's like, yeah, the only other person who could possibly know that has been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Although how John manages to like pull off the shock without moving that body or drawing any attention to himself, ooh, he is a good actor.
John's the MVP.
Don't ask questions.
Wait, but doesn't he like give himself a shot before to like make his body like stay limp or not?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, to
breathe?
slow down
Like,
his
doesn't
heart
he-
rate and stuff. Like, he
Yeah, there's
basically...
like that
Yeah.
Romeo and Juliet shot.
Oh my god.
So if your heart rate slowed down, wouldn't it be easier to not move? Like you're just like chilling?
I guess.
These aren't questions we ask about Saw.
There we go.
We just
Yeah.
take it as is. Face value.
He's just sitting there like planning his next diorama, guys.
Yeah.
Actually, it's like, 20 seconds, but like, yeah, my dad and I love this movie so much when we saw it that we actually showed it to my mom and sister when we were on like a snow skiing vacation. Like, we were in the hotel room and we were like, whatever. My mom thought the twist was so dumb. She was like, that's not really realistic. And she didn't like the movie, not because of the gore and whatever, but specifically because she thought the twist was dumb.
Amazing.
It's like, I disagree, and I love that so much. Like, I love that was the thing she didn't like about it. I just love that. That's a great story.
She was like, I don't know about that.
I mean, honestly, every time you talk about your mom on the podcast, I'm like, oh, that is so Trace's mom.
That's so great. That's a great anecdote.
That's what she does.
Okay, so let's talk about Adam's abduction scene, because now we get his flashback, and
This is great.
I think this whole sequence is fantastic. I actually did shout this out, Trace, if you remember, on the Patreon minisode that we did last month when we talked about the best jump scares. So this was one of my picks.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Good timing.
Not planned, but yeah, good timing. So I just think that the use of the camera as an illumination source in this dark-ass, janky apartment, and then we get, we know it's coming, but it still totally works.
This is something that effectively blends suspense and like scary for me, because you have that old adage, the Hitchcock like bomb under the chair bit. This is one where it's okay, well, everything leading up to the scare is suspenseful because we know one of these flashes is going to have it's like someone there.
But it goes on way longer than you would think.
Well, and that's what makes it so good, right? Like you're waiting for it, and then it just keeps going, and so it's like the perfect time when it happens, where like you kind of let your guard down because you're like, oh, well, it hasn't happened yet, and then it does. Because
Hoffman never knows when to make a fucking entrance. He's just been hiding out in that fucking closet the whole time. So back in the present, this is where we learn, oh no, the time has almost run out. Speaking of the bomb under the table, we've only got 25 minutes until 6, and that's when Adam has to die, or else Allison and Diana, who are still characters in this movie, will be executed.
So, okay, wait. Going into morality here. So, Lindsay has kind of poked fun at he's a man that thinks he doesn't kill people. Literally, Zepp's job is to murder the wife and daughter if Gordon doesn't do his job.
Who are completely innocent in this, by the way.
Completely. They have done nothing wrong. So, regardless of what anything in the sequels happens, this is literally, he is setting up these people to die.
I can't recall, too, what is, Zeb isn't innocent in this, too, isn't he? Isn't he just an orderly at the hospital, and he gets injected with this virus, or some kind of poison, because it's more slow-acting poison?
I think he's there's something about him. I just thought he was, I don't know, maybe he's just creepy. Maybe I just read that into the character.
Yeah, he's an orderly at the hospital. And, so what Jigsaw does is, he's like, oh, I didn't kill anybody. You had the choice. But in reality, he still has to kill some people to, look at Amanda and her trap. It's this one, right? Yeah, she stab someone to survive,
right? Yeah, she does murder somebody.
And I feel like it doesn't bother me that Jigsaw doesn't think he's a killer, because there's obviously some sort of
God complex,
psychosis, some sort of there's something going on there. So it doesn't bother me that Jigsaw thinks he's not a killer, but it is really odd to me when the cops are all talking and what's her name? I already forgot her name. But she's like...
Dina Mayer. She's like, oh, he's never actually killed anybody.
Yeah, she's like, technically he's not a killer. And it's like, no, technically he definitely is. And it's weird to me that the cops think that.
So...
I mean, he's not putting his hands on people, so you can't be he murdered them to whatever degree that is in law terms. I mean, Lindsay would know.
No, I'm sorry. If you set up traps and then someone walks in them, and if you set up a trap that's job is to kill a person, and then the person walks into the trap that is designed to kill the person that you designed the trap to kill, you killed them. You killed that guy.
But they had the option to survive. Although
no
that guy that Amanda kills doesn't have the option to survive. He's like, kill this guy or you die.
I'm sorry, there is no, I promise you, all the, defense lawyers in the world are not sweating about whether or not John Creamer is going to get convicted.
So just so y'all know, the reason that he targets Zepp is because, this is according to the Saw Films fandom page, which is a Wikipedia page.
Amazing.
He targets him because he suffers from an inferiority complex.
Oh my god. Come on.
Wow. Jigsaw has some high morality cases with
Jesus
people.
Christ.
His tape, it's just, hello, Mr. Hindle, or as they call you around the hospital, Zepp. I want you to make a choice. There's a slow-acting poison coursing through your system, again, which only I have the antidote for. Will you murder a mother and her child to save yourself? Listen carefully, if you will. There are rules. What?
Yeah.
Yep.
He's like, will you do this? Will you murder people? He's like, I'm not going to put my hands on that. But, I did inject a poison into you. So,
also,
you kind of have to do it.
I mean, listen.
You got to do what I want you to do.
He's a killer. The cops would know he's a killer. Everyone knows he's a killer. It's fine that he doesn't think it because he's, there's a pathology. Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
But no.
Because he's a psycho.
Yeah, he's a killer. He's straight up a psycho killer.
It could be argued that the brain tumor is affecting him in this way.
Oh my god.
I mean, by someone, but again, no one is sweating.
He's like, you can
Or,
read.
like a bunch of lawyers in a room being like, he's gonna make a brain tumor argument. Like they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this guy's going to jail.
Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, we found his manifesto on braintumormorality.com, and
That's not gonna fly. This isn't an episode of House. It's not gonna fly.
That's amazing.
I don't think Dr. House would last very long in this world either.
Oh, House is toast. He couldn't be a doctor in Saw City. It's way too healthy for him.
You can't be a doctor or a cop.
Jigsaw is probably gonna like kill House in Saw City.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
literally an addict who's reckless.
If you've
That's
been...
what Jigsaw wants to kill. Like that's his like MO. Like that guy is the first on his list.
If anything, Gordon would live
House.
because he would be like, Dr. House is my target. Dr. Gordon is
I know.
mine.
I mean, in a way, Jigsaw's he's a vigilante because he's doing what the cops can't do. Like he puts people in these traps when they get out of prison.
Okay.
He's Batman.
Oh, God.
Oh my god. I thought it was... It was so fun. Thanks so much again for inviting me on your podcast.
Welcome to my
Please follow me on
podcast,
Twitter.
Batman Jigsaw. Okay, so Allison's in danger, y'all. So she calls this flip phone that can only receive calls, as we said. And this is where we learn that both Gordon and Adam are liars. So, of course, Adam is the one who is taking pictures because he was hired by TAP. And Gordon has been cheating on his wife with Carla, the med student, played by Alexandra Chun.
So what do y'all make of his, I did not cheat on her!
I mean, you fucking did, buddy.
Oh my-
That's not the first time you were in that hotel room.
Well,
Let me
no,
stop
so I was
everyone.
like-
Let me stop everyone. No. Let me stop all of you.
Well, I
right
do
now.
want to. By the way, Trace, you're like you're nailing this voice. By the way,
It's you
Yeah,
just
that
kind
was
of have
really
to
great.
hold your cheeks into your teeth a little bit to get that.
I mean, to be clear, he
sound.
sounded Scottish the first time he did it, but now he sounds better.
okay.
You bastard!
I got like really
Fat
excited to
bastard.
try, and then I was like, "This is being recorded, Lindsay."
Okay, yeah. So wait, yeah. What is your rationale here, Lindsay?
Okay, no, hold on. I just want to be clear. You are willing to accept. All of you made arguments. Willing to accept.
Uh-oh, the lawyer's here.
Hold on. Yeah, sorry, she's entered the chat. You are all willing to make arguments to buy into the fact that Jigsaw is not actually a killer. But Gordon saying that he only spent time with this woman and didn't actually sleep with her, you are not at all willing to accept that he didn't cheat on his wife. Which, for the record, I think that he cheated on his wife, but I just think it's a little interesting that you're like, oh, Jigsaw, maybe you could say that he's not technically a killer, but with Gordon, you're like, oh no, just because he went to a hotel room with her, he definitely cheated on his wife.
Hey,
Oh no, Gordon's a creep.
Yeah,
Fuck
he's
that
obviously,
guy.
no,
yeah.
he's no, but
I
here's my
hate
thing.
the Saw 3D twist.
So up until this viewing, I 100% always thought, oh yeah, he's been cheating on his wife for X amount of time. Like that's always been happening. But the only thing that's now giving me pause on this is basically when the girl starts taking off her clothes and he stops her and she's like, what? It's not like I know how this works. So I was like, oh, maybe it's his first time with her and maybe she is the first. And he goes to the hotel. They've obviously set up an arrangement and he stops her and they don't do it.
Yeah, that's always what I assumed.
So
Yeah.
so he didn't cheat on his wife. He just
Well,
almost cheated
I mean,
on his
if
wife.
it were me, I'd be like, you cheated on me. But like,
that's emotional cheating.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Done. You're toast.
you're out.
Not cheat on her.
Pack your bag. I don't know. I don't. But like, anyway.
Okay, now we're sounding like Bane.
Oh my god.
Just gonna say.
Oops.
I need a mug so I can do my Bane voice. No, I agree. That's definitely cheating. But I'm just saying.
No punishment less good less again.
Oh my god. I couldn't understand you, so yeah, you nailed it.
I think I did a great job. Thank you so much.
Okay, so this is where we see pictures. Gordon realizes that Adam has taken a bunch of pictures, and he notices, or he recognizes, rather, Zepp in the picture as the time limit gets hit. So we get some action. This is where we start to cross-cut.
See, I thought this is when we learned that it's Zap, right?
This is where we officially learn it, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that it's not Jigsaw. It's not our boy Jiggy.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So we start to cross-cut because Allison has freed herself. She's fighting with Zepp with a gun. This is where Tap breaks in, and he's pursuing Zepp back to the warehouse in this high-speed chase. So basically, the tail end of this is that both Zepp and Tap get shot.
Tap is useless in this. Like, his only purpose is to save the mother and daughter because he is killed immediately after that.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this is supposed to be subversion, like we think Tap is going to be the one to break in and save the day, and then we're reminded, no, cops are useless. They're just likely to get shot or draw their weapons badly. Yeah.
That's interesting. I feel like I don't know the answer to that. Because part of me is like, it's very like The Shining, where the guy just gets like killed with an axe immediately.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that would have been on purpose or not. I don't know that that's a Shining reference, but it's like an interesting... You could probably, the same analysis you would have done about The Shining, you could probably do for that moment.
That's probably true. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, like, we know that Winnell and Wan know their horror movies because they reference a shit ton of them in all their other work, so I wouldn't be surprised.
A conversation to be had.
Okay, so this is where we start to get the epic Gordon meltdown, because he's been hearing all of this on the phone, so he thinks his family is in super big danger. So he goes, fuck this shit! And then he begins sawing off his own foot.
This shit.
I love it. Love it.
Fuck this shit!
He's like, I'm getting out of here. I can re-sew my foot back on. I don't care.
I'm a doctor.
He's a surgeon.
I'll get this shit done.
I know that he's losing a lot of blood, but the blue makeup on his face. He looks like a ghost.
It's not even his blue makeup. It's that his cheeks are hollowed out with like a grayish, somewhere between a contour and blush.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then and this is, I wrote in here, I'm like, gay love scene coming up, because this is where we have Adam from across the room going, Lawrence, I need you! And like to stop him from cutting his foot off.
Oh, and like Adam is so in love with him that even after Gordon shoots him in the shoulder, he's still willing to beat Zeb to death.
Mm-hmm. With that nasty ass toilet cover.
No solids. That's fine in the movie.
Oh my god. I think that's actually the grossest part of the movie for me, is when he sticks his hand in that toilet.
Same. I'm not into that. I mean, I feel like Lindsay probably agrees too, because she doesn't like Drag Me to Hell, and so like that kind of stuff, like body, like no thanks.
Yeah, it's a huge no from me.
That's how I am with pus. I can't do pus.
Oh yeah, it's gross.
Oh yeah, that's all in the body shit that I don't need.
Yeah. Give me the blood, give me the guts, just don't give me like anything else.
The no solids thing also really, let's just say upset me, because it could just be like Adam, who's made all these jokes about like lube, and he's used the word hookers, and he makes all these like gross jokes. Yeah. He makes all these like weird jokes, so it could just be like bro-y, gross Adam saying no solids is like a funny gag.
Mm-hmm.
But it also kind of begs the question of like, did somebody use the toilet, and was it on purpose to set the trap?
That's what I'm wondering now.
Like, I always wondered,
like this bathroom it's a warehouse, so the bathroom was designed specifically for this room. Like, does it have plumbing? How does it work? Where did he find it?
Like, since my first viewing, I've been like, did John set up the whole trap?
I know that Scary Movie 4 uses like Saw as one of its parodies, but I am really surprised they don't have anyone shitting in that toilet in that spoof, because I'm just imagining like Jigsaw, he comes in, he drags them in, he chains them up, and he's like, he takes his little blood thinner or like heart stopper pill, and he's like, oh, it gives you the runs. That's the side effect. And he just like shits all in this toilet before he gets his makeup on and lays down.
I'm just imagining, you know how like we all end up like scrolling through like things on our phone apps, and I'm just imagining him being like, well, I guess I better go number 2 one last time before I lie down here. I'll just check the Slack to make sure that Amanda and Hoffman are set up. Oh, there's that funny meme. Oh yeah, that's great.
And then just like taking it out. It's a question we deserve the answer to, and I think the biggest tragedy about Lee Wanell leaving Twitter is that he usually does really great Q&As and will answer your questions about his film minutia, and I hope that he comes back so we can ask him this question.
Oh my god, why did we not ask him before he left? I dumbly asked about the Spiral song. I should have asked him about the shit in the toilet.
Who shit in the toilet?
Who shit in that toilet?
So Lindsay, does that mean like this is another episode where we're just like, oh, does Jigsaw shit?
Does Jigsaw shit?
Does Batman fuck?
Does Batman fuck and does Jigsaw shit?
Oh my god.
Anyway.
I mean, Jigsaw is Batman, according to
Right.
us.
So he fucks and
upset.
shits, is what we're
Like,
saying.
delete all of you. Cross out.
Oh,
Cross
boy.
out horror queers.
There we go.
We're
We are
done.
done. We are done with this. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean, we get a lot. We get the only scene, because I've never noticed it until we watched it last year, actually. But yeah, we get this scene where like they basically Lawrence crawls to Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Adam has been shot by Lawrence, and they're just like embracing each other. It's a near kiss, and they're just staring lovingly into each other's eyes.
It's so
Obviously,
tender.
it is not intentionally homoerotic.
No.
But oh my god!
But it
every
super
time
is.
I watch, it's just like whoo, kiss, boys.
Kiss before he passes out from blood loss.
So he gets away. Gordon crawls away.
So slowly, yeah. And this leaves Adam to search for the key, but he instead finds this tape. This is where we find out that Zepp was doing this under order, so he's not Jigsaw. And then this is where the bathroom body picks itself up, and the music starts to fucking kick in.
Dun, 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 dun.
So
Dun, dun, dun.
again, because I was trying to pay attention to this reveal, because I mean, so Jenny, I know you didn't see this in theaters, but Joe and Lindsay, did both of you see this in theaters?
Mm-hmm.
I remember. Like, I was not I saw this, like, on a Sunday afternoon with my dad, I think. Because, like, my mom and sister didn't want to go see it, obviously. But I just remember it was one of the biggest auditoriums at the AMC. And it was maybe half full. But you could hear, like, the shot where John gets up, where Jigsaw stands up, it holds on Adam for, like, again, longer than you expect. So you're just like...
He's horrified.
Well, because it's letting you soak in the fact that, oh, this isn't Jigsaw. And so you're just like, what? And it's, like, after, like, 7 seconds, and you see... like, just John get up out of frame.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing the audience when this happened is one of the best theater-going experiences I've ever had. Like, hearing the, whoa! Like, all over the fucking theater. It was so good.
Like, what?
I do love, too, like, the final moments is John just... like electrocuting Adam once again, because we love to make Leonel squirm, and then he just goes to the door and he stands there like a fucking iconic badass, gives us the game over, and then slams the door. So good.
And he didn't kill anyone.
Okay.
And he's scot-free.
I left him
committed
to
zero
die.
hours.
I didn't kill him.
I didn't kill him. It's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing, in fact. Quite literally exactly the same thing. But yeah, that ending, first of all, I think it's in my opinion, one of the greatest endings of all time.
Yeah.
Because, sorry, when I say greatest, I think it's one of the scariest endings of all time. I think how long we hear Adam scream after that door slam is like, you're talking about, I've seen this movie, 15 times, and you're talking about a movie I've seen so many times, and just you talking about him closing the door makes me feel sick. Like, I get like a tight feeling in my chest just hearing it. It's so scary to me.
Well, isn't that a terrible way to go, though? Right? Like, you're just sitting there in the dark,
worst
and you're
way.
dying from starvation and or thirst.
And no one's like gonna find you.
He knows, like, it occurs to him in that moment that that's what's going to happen, and Jigsaw just slams the door, and that's all what Adam is now thinking while he screams through the credits. Oh my god.
Because Jigsaw's delivery is, the key to that chain is in the bathtub. And then
Yes.
we get his light bulb moment, and then the cut flashback to like, oh yeah, that's what that glowing thing was in the opening credits of this movie.
And like, so yeah, you said it. I was going to say, of all the great work that Tobin Bell does throughout the series, that moment where he so casually tells Adam what he needs to know while wiping blood off his face is incredible. The possibility that was maybe a first or second take is unbelievable to me, because he literally there's no fanfare. It's all just the music that makes the fanfare, and him slowly getting up and the way it's shot. Like, it's music, and the fact that it's kind of out of frame is so cool. And then he just wipes blood and just goes, oh yeah, the key was, you had it at the beginning. See you later. Like, what?
We've mentioned Charlie Clouser's score, but it cannot be understated how impactful the Hello Zepp track is.
Oh, yes.
To the point where I get chills every time. I mean, and again, like, as someone who doesn't like Jigsaw, like, the Twisted Pictures logo opens with, like, kind of a remix of the Hello Zepp theme.
Oh,
And
you
I
mean
just
the
remember-
movie Jigsaw?
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, the movie Jigsaw. But I just remember sitting in theaters, 4 years ago? Oh my god. And just being, like, getting chills, because, like, oh my god, it's the song! It's the song!
They know what they've got with that one. All right, so this is the end of Saw, and I would love to hear if you had to die from any of the deaths in this movie. How would you die?
You didn't want to ask us if we wanted to play a game?
Oh my god. It was implied.
It's the quote from the movie.
Fine. Ladies, would you like to play a game Trace doesn't get to play anymore? How would you like to die?
Okay, wait. Are you asking me like how I want to go, or like what trap like I want to have? Which one do I want to experience and potentially survive, or is it like I'm going?
Oh no, like you have to die like one of the characters. I'm basically riffing on Kill by Kill's premise, where it's like you have to die like one of the characters in this movie.
I'm gonna die like one of the characters in the movie. Okay, I think I'm gonna say reverse bear trap then.
Okay, well, oh yeah, well...
But Amanda doesn't die.
Okay, I guess then there's only like 3 deaths in the movie.
Okay, well, no. So hey, yeah, no, let's say, so you can either barbed wire yourself to death, you can light on fire, you can, we'll say Amanda, yes, so even though she doesn't die, we'll say that, you can be the cellmate in her cell that she has to stab. You can get shot, like Detective Tapp, you can...
Or Detective Singh.
Or Detective Singh. Ooh, that's actually a good one. Or you can be left in a bathroom to rot, like Adam. Or you can get a toilet bowl smashing like Zeb.
I'm still, I mean, if reverse bear trap is an option, that's the one for me. It seems quick. Yeah, there's some fear because you've got like some time, but it seems pretty quick and ultimately painless. The other ones sound terrible and slow.
I'm going to go with, if I have to die, I was going to cheat and be like, reverse bear trap because Amanda survives. But, probably the guy that's, like, zonked out on the floor when she kills him.
Right, because he doesn't feel anything.
Right, he just dies.
Okay, y'all are all wrong. I'm going for Singh's death. Shoot me 1,000 times with a shotgun because I am immediately
Oh my
dead.
god.
Like...
Yeah, but he's so... Yeah, that's true. I mean, he doesn't see it coming. There's, like, no fear. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, and, like, a shotgun aimed at your head, like, you are dead in an instant. I mean, you cannot have an open casket funeral. I'm sorry, parents, for me. But, like, no. Like, just blow my head off.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like zonked out's pretty okay. I don't feel anything. I don't know what's going on.
He's missing his stomach. That's fine.
I'm going to go with Tapp's death because it feels very indicative of who I am as a person, that I would be like, I'm going to save the day. And then it's like, I got shot right in the door outside and I'm completely fucking useless.
We all know I would die if I had to do the safe because I can't put numbers into anything.
Oh, yeah. There you go, Lindsay. That is 100%. You would be like, oh, it has numbers. And then you would just be like, oops.
I would just give up.
Look, the one I want to try to see if I could beat it is the barbed wire one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But that one also is the, like, worst one. Also, it's the most fat-phobic one.
Oh, 100% fat-phobic.
It is, but I'm also just like, I think he had, like, 2 hours, and I'm like, when they're doing the fast editing, I'm like, okay, he's, like, tossing himself into this barbed wire. Like, there has to be an easier way to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you do if you had, like, a minute to get across that?
I don't think it was a minute.
He has, like, very little amount of time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's a maximum 3 minutes. They never give more than, like, 3 minutes.
I'm going to be Catherine Zeta-Jonesing from Entrapmenting this, like, laser wires, like, getting through this shit.
Okay.
When in reality, he's going to be that girl from Suspiria where she just, like, falls into the room with the barbed wire and dies.
Just roll in the barbed wire.
Fuck this shit. That's me.
Oh,
they're like, put a combination into the safe. It'd be like Jigsaw.
Fuck this shit.
I know we're reaching the end, and I know we've actually picked on this movie a lot, but y'all, what are your final thoughts on Saw as a film, not a franchise?
It's perfect. I love it start to finish. It's not perfect, but I really love Saw, obviously. I think it did so many cool things, like I already said at the beginning. I love that it gave us a new horror franchise that we got to experience in real time. It had so much fun with its budget that it got to do things like, you know, I go back to the like Mad Max bit. Like they had to go and remove frames to make things look more frantic. And now that's something that is done in movies like Mad Max Fury Road, which is so cool and calls to, you know, Sam Raimi strapping a camera to a bike, allegedly. Or let's just say shaky cam. Let's just say shaky cam. I think it did so many cool things. It created this like gritty, beautiful messy movie that it ended up creating an aesthetic as opposed to being hindered by their budget. And I think that's such a cool thing.
For me, it's interesting because I think obviously this was like my introduction to James Wan and a lot of horror and a lot of like my life. And I think the movie itself, it depends on when I watch it. Like, I watched it for the 10th anniversary in theaters, and I was like, oh my god, I love this. Like, 4 stars, it's so good. But then rewatching it a few times since, I'm like, it does get slow in the procedural. It does kind of get weighed down a little bit. And I think the good parts are specifically the Tobin Bell Jigsaw, like the bathroom scene, iconic. And so it's a good, solid movie. It's not perfect, but I also think that its legacy is bigger than its flaws. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree.
It 100% does. And honestly, like, look at so many of like what is considered like classic horror cinema. Like, I do think it's all films that have been influential in some way or another, right? Like, Halloween is not a perfect film. There are issues with Halloween, but it was so influential in defining what would become like the slasher genre. I mean, of course, on top of things like Black Christmas and Psycho and Peeping Tom, but like that was the one that popularized it. And that is kind of how I feel about Saw. I mean, I'm of the mindset that Saw 2 kind of perfects what Saw like creates, and it makes it my favorite film in the franchise. But like,
I totally agree.
As a first film, yes, Jenny, I'm with you. Like, the more times I watch, it's so much easier to pick out like the little flaws and the cracks in this film. Like, this is not a perfect film. But I will also side with both of you in this and say, yeah, like, this is such an influential film, and it shows so much creativity with the little amount of money they had to work with this, that it makes me upset when people write this off as, oh, that's just torture porn bullshit, because it is so much more than that, and it deserves so much more credit than that.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. Like, it's influential, it's evocative of a particular period of time. It gave us 2 iconic new directors. Yeah, it kind of kickstarted this brand new franchise that I wasn't seeing on the horizon. Like, Scream was my franchise, and then really the Saw franchise became my new one, where it was something I could look forward to every year. And I agree with you, Trace. I think I get really annoyed when people just want to write this off like it's some kind of bro-y thing, or they lump it in together as part of the torture porn movement and say as though that doesn't mean anything, like these films have no merit. And I just completely disagree with that. It's not a perfect film, but it does set the stage for some really entertaining, great films that come into this franchise. And yeah, it's also fucking Canadian as hell, and I love that about it as well.
It also gave us a Teen Choice Award winner for Choice Movie Scream. That's the category for Lee Wanall.
Oh my god!
Oh, for the closing Scream?
He won a Teen Choice Award for this movie, guys.
Oh my
I
God.
just found this out.
Good for
Award-winning
him.
movie Saw.
Okay, well, that will be Saw. And before we announce what we're covering next week, Jenny and Lindsay, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
Yes, you can find me on social media at Smash Travis, SMASHTREVES, and that is the same on Twitter and Instagram. I also have a podcast called The Pod and the Pendulum, which you can also find on Twitter at Pod and Pendulum, and also throughout my many links. And yeah, you can hear us ultimately, hopefully, talk about Saw. But
Nice.
everyone here has been a guest, so there you go.
Yeah, cool. So you can find me at Jenny Lee X33, and that's Lee spelled Leigh. I write for the Austin Chronicle, but one of the biggest things I have coming up is next month in June 4th through the 20th, my film festival that I help program for. I'm the program director for Austin Asian American Film Festival. We have a geo-locked Texas festival all throughout the month with a few drive-ins. So if you're in Texas, and especially if you're in Austin, you can go and look into that and see if it's something you would like. We also have free shorts available online as well.
Oh, nice.
So giant plug for what I do.
Absolutely.
As you should. Well, all right, everyone. So, well, first of all, Jenny and Lindsay, thank you for coming on to this episode. It's always fun to chat Saw with y'all.
Thank you. A thrill.
Thank you so much.
And again, by the time this episode comes out, well, I was going to say, but Jenny and I will have seen Spiral. So
Shut up.
I will have seen it twice, guys.
Yeah, you will.
gosh.
Be jealous.
Look for Jenny's review of Spiral from the Book of Saw in the Austin Chronicle, actually.
There we go.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Thank you for plugging that.
You're welcome. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Horror Queers and join our Facebook Horror Queers group to hang out with other listeners. You can also find our Letterboxd, which search for Horror Queers, to keep track of all the films we've covered on the main feed and on the Patreon. And we've also got a YouTube channel to pair with our Micro Queers short film coverage that we do every Friday. Wow. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. Just a reminder, we are an explicit podcast, so we do not show up in the Patreon search engine. You have to Google it or just use the exact link I just gave you, which is, again, patreon.com/horrorqueers. We're in the middle of our Ghosts and Zombies theme month for May, so if you subscribe, you can hear episodes on Simon Barrett's new film Seance and Zack Snyder's new film Army of the Dead. And to pair with each of those, we have quote-unquote classic horror films and Mike Flanagan's Ouija Origin of Evil, and an audio commentary on Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake.
I love how you say classic like it sounds like they're pieces of shit.
Well, I mean, like they're not old. I don't know if they're old enough to be classics. I mean, maybe Dawn of the Dead remake, but like not Ouija. I mean, I love Ouija Origin of Evil, but it's not like it's been like what, 5 years?
Yeah, indeed.
Joe.
Mm-hmm.
We are doing something more recent next week. What are we covering?
Well, we're sticking with some stylized filmmaking, but yes, we are jumping ahead quite a bit into the future. We're going to stop over in Los Angeles, Trace. I'm feeling like we need a little photo shoot, a little glamour in our lives, and I think we should check out The Neon Demon.
Nicholas Winding Refn.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, this is a movie that I like, but I have never wanted to rewatch since seeing it the first time. So this will be my second time watching this movie.
I'm here for Jenna Malone, baby. Jenna Malone all the way.
Ooh, content warning for necrophilia, by the way.
So many different.
Speaking of... all right, well, that will close us out so we can cross out Saw.
Yes, and cross out Horror Queers.
You've made it to the end of another bloody, disgusting podcast. Congratulations. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody, disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, Nightmare on Film Street, and more.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.